Hey guys, Jared here, and for the first installment of the Swift Basics series, I found it very fitting to do if statements. If statements are probably going to be one of your most used functions in programming. I use it all the time, so let's just go ahead and jump right into it. So the first thing we're going to do is, you would normally just work with this in your own project, but today, to show it off, I found it very fitting to use the playground so that we can play around with it and see what happens when we work with these variables. So we're just going to go ahead, open up Xcode, and say get started with a playground. And if you've never used Playground, it's a really awesome tool so that you can learn how things work and you can play around with variables and such. It's a great way to just get started without actually having to program an actual application. But once you actually do learn how to use it in Playground, it's very easy to apply inside of your app because you get how it works. So let's just go ahead, put a name of your playground. I shall just call this my if playground, and then just go ahead, hit next, and create. Alright, so first off, let's just go ahead and get started with the basics. So right now we can just go ahead and delete that string right there, and let's get started. So we'll just go ahead and create a variable real quick. We'll call this var will be equal to, and I'm just going to set this equal to 1. Then I'm going to create another variable down here, and I'm going to create this my main number or something like that. And then you're just going to go ahead and set this equal to 0. And then down here, this is where the if statement comes in. So I'm just going to go ahead and say if my main number is equal to, and you need to use two equals. This is a comparison value, so you want to say equal. If you just say equal, this is different because with equal you're setting a value. With equal you're comparing a value. That's what that's all about. We'll get into all these signs in just a minute. But you're going to say if the main number is equal to, and we'll set this equal to my number to compare, then you're going to do this stuff in here. And in this case, I'm wanting it to print a variable so that we can check it out. So I'm going to say print high, or something like that. So I'm just going to print high if this is true. But as you can see, 0 is not equal to 1, so that's not true. So this is also where the else statement comes in. So with the else, you can just say else, open parentheses, and then you can just go ahead and say print like it's not the same. And then if you look down here at your console, you can see that it's spitting out that it's not the same. And that is exactly what we had it. So we have the if statement. Obviously this isn't true, so we're switching over to this else statement. And then also with your else statement, there's a couple other things that you can do with the else statement, in fact. So you can say else if, and then you can just act like it's normal if statement. So you can say else if the main number is equal to 0, then we'll run this function in here. And as you can see, it ran not the same. So with this if statement, this isn't true, so it's hopping over to this else if statement. Now, what if that isn't true? Now, one thing I want to point out with these if statements right here, that you can have as many of these else if statements as you want, but anything past the one that's already being called will not be called. That's just how it works. So in order to get these other ones to be called, you just need to go ahead and start up another if statement string. And then it's going to go ahead and take that, and as you can see, it's going to call both of them. And then another thing that you can do is right after this else if statement, let's go ahead and say else if the main number is equal to 1. Then we can do that. And then after this, you can just add an ordinary else statement. And this is essentially going to be your default. So if anything else fails right up here, then it's automatically going to default to that one. There's no if statement attached. It's just going to go ahead and default to that. So we can go ahead and put this print statement right in here. And we'll just go ahead and say this is the else statement. And as you can see down here, the else statement is being called. So those are pretty much the things that you'll be using all the time. If, else if, and else. Now there's a lot more that we can go into, and one thing that I want to talk about, because I see a lot of people messing up with this with their if and else if statements, is what they want to do is they want to test whether or not this is true every time. So they say if, they try to put as many if statements in there as possible. But what's important about if and else if, and you want to try using as much as possible, is with the if right here that, let's go ahead and say else if the main number is equal to 0, then this else statement right here is actually not being tested whatsoever. So that goes true for, let's go ahead and take all these, let's just go ahead and take these and print them over and over again. So with these ones, as you can see, we're not printing it over and over again, even though we just have the same else if statement. So obviously this stuff down here is just not being called in any way. So this is very important, especially in games and stuff like that. You don't want to have any latency in your games, so you want to try having as little processes going on in the background, and this is included with the if statements and else if statements. So always try to keep in mind, is this a good place that I can put that if statement, or should I use an else if statement here? So yeah, that's just something I wanted to point out because I notice a lot of people make those errors. Now continuing on, let's go ahead and I'm just going to delete the rest of the stuff that we have right there with their if and else if. So there you have it. That's pretty much the main bulk of if statements. There's if, there's else if, and there's else. Now let's go ahead and dive into the signs of the if statement. So with this one right here, we have the automatic sign that if the main number is equal to compare. I mean, that's just basics. We're just basically comparing whether these numbers are the same. Let's go ahead and dive a little bit deeper. So we can say if the main number is less than the number to compare, then it's going to run that number. And essentially what this means is it's less than, we have the main number is 0, and that's less than 1. Now another thing you can do is if it's less than or equal to, then if we set that to 1, then this will actually be called as well. But in the case that it's just less than, it's not going to be called. It's basic mathematics, but we can go ahead and dive a little bit deeper. And another thing I want to point out is the not equal to sign. So that's the exclamation point equal. And again, that's just if the main number is not equal to the number to compare, then we're going to run that value. And in this case, we can put that as 0. And then it's going to go ahead and run that as, say, high, as you can see. Or you can make the main number is greater than the number to compare. So in this case, let's go ahead and set the main number equal to 4. Then that's going to go ahead and print out high, as you can see. And if we were to set that down to 0, it's going to print out the second one that we have right here. So with the main number, you can say if the main number is equal to the number to compare, and so in this case, you would put 2 ampersands, and this is going to allow you to have 2 variables to test. So let's just go ahead and create 2 more variables. I'll call this var 1 will be equal to 1, and then we'll say var 2 will be equal to 2. And then we can say if the main number is equal to the number to compare, ampersand, ampersand. Then we can just go ahead and say this is already inside of the if statement right here. So we can just say if 1 is less than 2, then we're going to run this function down here. And as you can see, it printed high. Now we can go ahead and switch this up. So if we have 1 as 3 and 2 as 2, then it's going to run this last statement right down there. As you can see, there's lots of possibilities that you can do right there. So there's the ampersand, and you can add as many ampersands as you want. So if you're testing a ton of variables, you can use this to your heart's content. And then another sign that I want to point out with if statements is you can actually say or. So if the main number is equal to the number to compare, or, and then in this case that would be 2 straight up lines like so. So, or this other statement is true. So if either statement is true, then it's going to run this. And then if none of them are true, they're going to run down there. Either way, we can go ahead, continue on, and we're just going to go ahead and say 1 is less than 2. Just going to go ahead and put that. Let's switch 1 back to that. And there you have it. So right now, let's go ahead and test this. If the main number is equal to the number to compare, then we can take this number to compare. I'm going to switch that over to 2. So obviously these aren't equal, but then it's also going to test this other one right here. So 1 is less than 2. So then it prints the high variable right there. There you have it. Also, one more thing that I wanted to point out is I know I'm using like numbers and all of this, but honestly, you can compare anything you want. So if you're using structures, if you're using just strings, if you're using anything else, you can go ahead and compare it with this if statement. So if I were to have a string, I could say if true, I'll just put that in there, I don't really know what I'm talking about, is equal to, and then we can just go ahead and put in true. Then we can actually see that this is going to be printing high. As you can see, you can compare different variables, different things. I was just using numbers because it seems like the easiest thing to compare, but you can use pretty much anything under the sun and compare it. So just go ahead and give it a try and see if it works. So yeah, those are pretty much the fundamentals of if statements. I'm pretty sure there's more that you can go into with if statements, but those are pretty much everything that you need to know about them, at least to get you started. Anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed this first installment of the Swift Basics tutorial. If you did, be sure to hit that like button down below, and if you want to see more videos like this from me in the future, be sure to subscribe. I'm posting daily videos, so I hope you guys enjoy them. Anyway, have yourselves a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.